Have you ever wondered if there was some magical part of you that you've been unable or afraid to access? Have you ever felt or been told you're crazy? Here's a thought to ponder. What if you're not? What if every imaginary friend, every letter to Santa Claus, every fairy or elf you saw as a child was your inner self reaching out to the spiritual world? What if your blocks are really a bridge? What if your wounds are really your windows? What if all your anxiety and your trauma are there to elevate you to something greater than yourself? I'm here to tell you, you're not crazy, you're connected. Hear from the rock stars of the New Age world about that moment when they stepped into their power and how you can step into yours too. Here on Crazy Connected with your host, Bridget LeRoy. Welcome to this episode of Crazy Connected. I'm your host, Bridget LeRoy. I am thrilled to have today's guest on. I've been trying to get him in the studio for a while. Our schedules didn't really mesh. But in January, I went to Blue Spirit in Nosara to go to a week of ecstatic chant. And David Pramal and Mitten were on the docket, and Jai Uttal. Pura vida. Jai Uttal was on the docket, and just an amazing. But the big surprise was Akah. And Akah is the life partnership of Akah Jackson and Pauline Drossart. And they just knocked me for a loop. And I'm just so pleased to have Akah on the show with us. Besides being an incredible percussionist and musician, he is a fifth-generation plant and medicine man. He is a recovery coach. He is a preacher of the highest sort that I have ever met, and a Qigong instructor, Kundalini Yoga. The list goes on and on. Welcome, Akah. Welcome to Crazy Connected. So grateful you're here.
Thank you for the honor to show up in this way and be here with all you do and all that you uplift. Thank you so much for being that light in the world. That's what we need.
Wow. Well, the show is called Crazy Connected for a reason, and the reason I asked you on is because I'm really interested in the shift, because it sounds like you were raised in a spiritual way with the fifth generation of the plant and medicine people and the indigenous wisdom, all of that. But then I have a feeling that something happened, and then you became spiritual again, or maybe like something got lost along the way and you recovered it. So like my question to everybody is, when did you realize you weren't crazy, you were connected?
That's an interesting point of view. Because, as you said, if you consider the setting of the South, in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, when my great-great-great-grandfather, Grandpa Joe, was a water boy, as they would say, in the Civil War, but he was aware of, as well, the medicine way with plants, and so I imagine he wasn't just carrying water to the soldiers.
Right.
And he's the one that passed the medicine on to a Mamie, who was the spirit and medicine woman in that area of Alabama, which is Goshen, Alabama, not too far from Troy, Alabama. And this is the time when there are no hospitals for people that are considered ex-slaves. So from this perspective, the ways of plant and spirit medicine is what survived the practice of slavery, and therefore those people in those areas were the urgent care clinics.
Right.
They were the place where people could go short of having to go to a hospital. So they were the midwives, and they were the first responders to situations. And that was my Aunt Mamie. So, to consider it being such a way of life because of the energy of segregation, because of that suppression that took place, life begets life. So being in this this nature that is Alabama, especially in the country, and growing your own food and doing what it takes to take care of self, to have an awareness that there is this physical realm and then somehow this memory that there is an invisible realm. There is a way to have the communication with the plants. That's not like I want to talk to the plant, pick up my cell phone and call Dandelion and say, hey, what's going on? I got this problem. Can you help somebody with these eruptions on their skin? You know, it's like we were tuning in before the session. You know, there's something about this inhale that is bringing everything we need to be who we are. Can science duplicate it? Can you interpret what it is? There's some close guesses as far as science is concerned. There's some analyzing that goes on with what gets physically taken into the body by analyzing the air, the atmosphere of the earth. But there's something that is so intangible that there is no way for the machines of science to pick it up. And so I'm just speaking about this internal connection, that where did the shift take place to where I became aware that I'm spiritual when I wasn't, or what's going on in my being where...
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I imagine since you're a recovery coach that addiction is part of your story. I'm just guessing there, but it's part of my story. So
yeah, you know, the ways to deal with the sensitivities to society that I had, you know, and the ways to cope, only because that is the initiation, you know, going on in my neighborhood. This is how you engage life. You create these relationships with these extrasensory experiences that overstimulate and bring some meaning to life culturally. You know, it's not just the substance. It is, you know, if we're getting ready to DJ at a party with my friends, and so this is part of the ritual of getting ready to DJ with my friends. It's more this social initiation into the way to stimulate the body, as I was leading from the energy of Alabama and being with what it is to be sensitive to nature, right? So there is this communication that some people now in our society say, oh, you're so spiritual. My daughter said, well, why you got to be so positive? And I said, well, what if this is the way we always live? What if there's something we've forgotten and now we're in this time of remembering?
Right.
And so I never really looked at myself as spiritual, but was always accused of being so. You know?
But yeah, it's funny. I mean, this is why I started this podcast, is because of what you just said. I was also a really sensitive child, and I saw things, and I heard things, and I felt things, and my reality, purely from a place of love and wanting to protect me, was, oh, you're crazy. Like, don't ever tell anybody what you just told me, right? So, of course, at the age of 9, I picked up a drink. 10, I picked up weed. I mean, and then I was off to the races for 20 years. So it was when I was able to lift myself out of those social constructs that I created to protect myself, that I truly felt that connection, that I think that I feel like I share that with you. So that's the crazy connection, right? Now you're crazy connected to everything. So yeah, tell me about the Qigong and the elements, because I practice Tai Chi and I know a little bit about the elements and stuff like that, but you're going to be doing a seasonal Qigong, which is really fascinating. So there's different movements or different, you know, forms for each season.
Right. So you consider when, just as simply a response that we have, when it's cold, we put on a coat. You know, we know how to put the heat on in the car. If it's hot in the summertime, you know, we seek cool drinks. We put on the air conditioners. Like, we have these responses to nature. But what if you could have a connection to the way we respond to nature by including yourself, by including myself as being one with this intelligence of nature. And what if we could begin to relate to spring in terms of, okay, spring is unfolding in me as well. So in traditional Chinese medicine and from the ancient teachings of Qigong, there's a connection of the season with the 5 different yin and yang organs. Now people will say, well, there's only 4 seasons. So there's a consideration of late summer as a season. So just go into spring. Springtime is the season of the liver and gallbladder. So this is the time when, appropriately so, if you look at the earth, there's an awakening. There's this sprouting of these fresh blue-green leaves. There's this sense of the flow of life.
And there's the bitter herbs like the asparagus and the dandelion, like the bitter herbs for your
rugulas and the watercrests, emerging out of the soil. And so there is this sense that the liver is doing the same thing. It's controlling this flow of qi emerging into the blood and fortifying it with this life force so that we can deal with the stagnation of the liver when it shows up as anger and frustration and lack of tolerance. If we look at our global society, to have a connection to movements that allows the liver channels to be free. So now there's a sense of the virtues of the liver, which have to do with compassion and tolerance. And you can look at that as love, where this, you consider all the things the liver does, but if you just look at it more as an energetic channel of flow, of life force through the body, then there's going to be this sense of its virtue of being able to be tolerant and patient and compassionate and loving. So the idea with the course to go through the season is now to see as an experiment what it's like to focus on the body and move it with the breath in a mindful way. What will happen as you intend to expand and open the channels of the liver and draw in, for example, communication with the season. Draw in that freshness of those buds that you see. And when you see them, what do you sense? You sense the color. Maybe there's a smell. But for the color is what we use in meditative processes in Qigong. We draw in that color. And then you can, what will happen when you do that for a year, to focus in on the movement of Mother Nature and allow ourselves to be connected to it. As you say, crazy connected.
Can I ask you a question? I'm really curious to hear what your opinion is about this, because obviously what you're talking about is ancient Chinese medicine, but it is so similar to Ayurveda, which was happening in India. And then there's indigenous wisdom from, from the natives. Yeah, you're giving me the look. Because how, Akah, how did this happen? Why was all this ancient wisdom coming to fruition at the same kind of time? 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. And how did that happen? That this was cropping up at all these wonderful different places. The chakras, the 7 portals, the meridians, everybody knew the same thing, right?
I have this sense, because you remember through the course of Mother Earth's journey, there was one landmass.
Yeah.
So if you consider that, when I deepen into it, that we have this perspective of analyzing outward material to gain information. But I have a sense that the information is within. So therefore, we're tapping into the same library, especially if you consider one landmass and how we were gathered here on Earth at a particular ancient time, and then all of the various transformations in society globally as we have various rises and falling of various civilizations, that there is this sense of a one truth that often echoes throughout all the mantras around the earth, this sense of being connected to this energy of life. So, like you said, there was a great, vast civilization in the Indus Valley. It was kind of towards South India and that hub of Africa and India and all that areas. There's that time. There's, Lemuria. There's Atlantis. There's these times when, during the golden ages of all the various ones, the recognition and the galvanization, the bringing together of the sacred knowledge. So here we are in our time and going into the Aquarian age, and the sense of it being inside us, the sense of us, we have this meditation called standing, embracing the tree meditation.
Right.
Standing meditation, so this sense that we are the tree of life. When you look at the lungs and you turn them upside down, if you look at them, it looks just like a tree.
Yeah.
Just consider that we are that sacred knowledge. So we gather in certain places, war develops and it scatters to protect it, but ultimately I just have that sense that it's inside of us. To gravitate to it.
You mentioned mantra, and I was lucky enough with my husband Eric to participate in your 40-day Ganapati. We still do it, not when we're driving, because it's hard to close your eyes when you're driving, but you offer so much. Talk to me a little bit about your partnership, your life partnership with Pauline. Mm-hmm. Your music is so wonderful. It's got a beat. You can dance to it, but it's also spiritual and wonderful. And tell me a little bit about how you guys, I guess how you live your life every day. It just seems such a beautiful, I watch your Instagram stories. What a beautiful life. But I also know you have a teenage daughter, so who is probably wonderful and marvelous, but family is family. Life gets lifier. Tell me a little bit about your partnership, or your partnership, your triangle with your daughter.
Yes. I mean, the fact that you have to consider, our beginnings were tumultuous. They had their stories of trauma within it, and therefore, as we learned in Ayurveda, taking a class in food preparation and Ayurvedically, Ayurveda, if anyone doesn't know, is the science of healing and regeneration from India, the science of life. Mm-hmm. And there's various branches of Ayurveda, in terms of looking at these teachings, and food and even yoga is part of that. But considering that we were in this class on food preparation, and she said something really interesting about who we are in terms of our lineage and how we come to be formed. And she says we are formed from the inadequacies of our lineage to ensure that we have the potential to come as the balancing force or energy that will allow the healing of the lineage to take place. So when I first heard it, I thought about weaknesses and all of the stories I heard about my family. But what happens is, there's a sense of the law of compensation in the universe, that what will gather within me are the forces that are to balance out the family lineage. So therefore, I have the capacity, of course, with my intention to develop myself, there is the capacity to be that restorative force in my lineage. And therefore, when it comes to family, I didn't think I would be able to have one, but that's what emerged for Pauline and I. By gravitating to music, I was involved in studying the healing powers of rhythms with another fellow herbalist, Dr. D, and she was on her musical career when we met at the Landmark Forum. Therefore, it was music that brought us together, because I brought a friend of mine as I was performing out in LA, and his band and the person he played for, and I was the percussionist for the band I played for, and we came, Uncle Charlie, and we did our thing to celebrate completing the Landmark Forum, which is a self-help kind of deep dive into yourself. And,
cool.
And therefore there's the music, but I say the music because then I got introduced to Kundalini Yoga, and music was a strong part of Kundalini Yoga as it was brought to the United States. But overall, yoga has a musical component to it in terms of bhakti yoga, nad yoga,
Right.
excuse me, and mantra yoga. So to chant these mantras, there's a rhythm and melody that goes along with it. And therefore, the healing power of sound emerges. And now, here, Pauline and I are weaved into this healing that is taking place that is crazy connected. What we need to heal our lineages. And therefore, this is where this miracle child comes into the picture as far as Sahaj is concerned. Because all of the stories Pauline and I could have about our family could really move us away from a commitment of marriage and family. But the music was that balm of Gilead, it was that harmonic balancer, that nourisher of love where we could recognize it and move beyond the limiting thoughts, behaviors, beliefs, habits, and step into the unknown, like you mentioned, like sitting here in the unknown. So really it was the mantra that awakened my awareness to being connected to plant and spirit medicine, and awakening me to being connected to the plants. And it really introduced me to so many things that are just part of our heartbeat when we think about the rhythm of our heart. So family becomes that for us now. When we have our differences, that love is another level of love. We didn't necessarily have the bells and whistles like, ooh, I want to know who you are, that kind of cosmopolitan, flashed in the movies kind of love. It was this love like your inhale. It's taking care of you. It's like this love that flowed between us. When I looked at her while we were playing music and chanting mantra and presenting and co-presenting in retreats or being with teachers, our senior teachers, and, when I look at her, and there's thousands of people at these yoga gatherings, but when I look at her, it's like I have a deep memory of doing this together.
Yeah, one of your songs starts like that. What is the song where you both talk to each other about millions of planets and light years? And I'm coming.
Gurudev Mata, Gurudev Pita. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Where can people find out more? You have so many hats on. You need to be like your own hat store, my friend. Yeah. Where can people find you? Because I know that Pauline does Shakti. She does moon circles for women, and you do men's sharing circles. Where can people find the information and find your music?
Well, you can go for the music. You can go to AYKANNA, ikana.com.
Okay.
For everything music. If you want to dive into the woman's work, you go to shaktischool.com. Okay. Right? And then for me, you can go to akahjackson.com. AKAHJACKSON.com. And then you can find out everything there. And I think I gave Tia, if you want to know about the course, Tia can flash it up for you.
I'm sure she will.
However way you like to do that when this takes place, and get it out to those that might be interested. You can check.
Well, you have just coming in and doing the breathing and having you on as a guest has just been so wonderful. I am so grateful. And the fact that we're both in Costa Rica, our paths are going to cross again. So I'm just so incredibly grateful, Akah Jackson, for coming here. Please give love from Adi Shakti to your wonderful, beautiful wife. Tell her I say hi. And thank you so much for coming on Crazy Connected. We're going to go out with a little light for everybody. Thank you so much.
That's right. Be that light. There's a storm out there brewing. We need everybody to help those ships come home. All right.
Tia, thank you so much.